Hello, this is Neil. How you doing? So I'm an art instructor at Udemy, one of the top paid art instructors with over 65,000 paying students, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to finish up this animation. So in a previous lesson I showed you how to do the animation part. Now I'm going to show you how to fill in the coloring, so how to do basically pixel art for smaller figures for video games. And you can use it for other things too, just for pixel art in general. So let's go ahead and get started. And there's a lot of cool tricks and stuff that you can learn for getting the pixel art right to make things look like they're supposed to when you only have a few pixels to work with. There's a lot of cool tricks. And yeah, so if you are not familiar with my courses, go check them out on Udemy. And I have my most popular course, which is my anatomy course, and you can also go to masterpaintingnow.com to get a discount on that course, I think for $10 right now. So if you click on masterpaintingnow.com, the link is in the description of this video, and go get a good deal on that. Let's go ahead and get going here. Alright, so after we had worked out the sketches for the animation, and we're pretty happy with that. If you haven't watched that video, it's the last video made before this one. Just go to my videos in the YouTube here and you'll see it. Maybe I'll try to link to it if I remember at the top there, or maybe link to it in the description or something. But anyway, so after you have that done, a really easy and fast way, I remember I told you I would show you guys a fast way to go about getting all the proportions and stuff correct. So you can use something called Clip Studio Paint. You can I'm pretty sure that this is all available in just the EX version, so if you can't afford the Pro version, I think the main, read about the main differences, but I think the main differences are you can't do super long animations. I think you're limited to 25-second animations. And what else? I think you don't get access to any of the controls for comic book pages, which is all just about how you save it. I don't ever use that anyway, so. And actually, I never made an animation over 25 seconds because I have never needed to, where we do very short animations for video games. Alright, anyway, so you'll notice over here, I'm not going to be showing how to use this software, just how to, you can use it for this purpose. But anyway, you go over here to the 3D thing. It's not showing the whole software right now because I didn't record it that way. But you just go over here to the 3D thing, click on body type, click on the female, and then you click on this option right here, and this will pull up options so you can change, like, the type of body, whether it's more fat, more skinny, more voluptuous, meaning bigger boobs and like that. So yeah, put it up here. So this is bigger boobs and hips, as you can see there. So that just gives you like the body type that will fit the character that you're doing. Now once you have that done, you want to now there's different ways to do this. You can either do each, if you already know how your animation is supposed to look, you can do each frame and then go ahead and save that out as a PNG, or you could actually use the animation part. You have to learn how to use animation because it's a little bit, it's not so intuitive, but once you know how to do it, it's really easy. You have to assign a cell to a layer. So it's a little different than how Photoshop's work. It's actually, I think it's better than how Photoshop's work for the animation. And then you can actually use the 3D doll. You assign the 3D layer to your you keep copying the 3D layer and assign it to the cell. Anyway. And then you can animate right here, to animate the 3D dolls from frame to frame right here in Clip Studio Paint, also known as Manga Studio. And that will allow you to see how it looks before you're actually done. But in this case, I already knew how it was going to look because I had my sketch there. But just in case, I recommend to animate the 3D doll to make little adjustments. And there's a lot of cool tricks. If anyone wants to see some cool tricks for animating in Clip Studio Paint, let me know with the 3D doll, because there's some really cool things you can do on how to manipulate the 3D doll. So anyway, I'm not going to go through this part because I'm not really describing how to use the software. All I'm doing is just matching up. Oh yeah, I wanted to look at wings here, how I want wings to look, like pixelized wings. And that's the actual, my game, Vampire Hunter V, also known as the Castlevania-like engine. Anyway, so after you have saved out the couple different frames that you want for your animation for the doll, now it's time to actually draw over it using pixel art. And so let's go ahead and rewind this part here, and I'm gonna do this part in real time. I'm not gonna have the real time audio because I want to make sure that I talk about the things that I need to talk about here. So what you want to pay attention to when you zoom in, and I recommend being zoomed in when you do pixel art, and the things you want to set in Photoshop is, under your pen tool, you want to hold it down, and then select the pencil option, and then you want to use 1 pixel sized, change it to 1 pixel. And then same thing with the eraser. So in the eraser, at the options at the top, after you click on eraser, it'll give you the option to turn it to a pencil, I believe, or anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about. Just you'll see the options up there. So at first, I'm just looking at the jagged edges of the 3D model. This is what's cool about saving the 3D model at the size. If you save the 3D model at the size that you're working with, then it'll automatically kind of give you a blueprint sort of the very pixels you can use to create these shapes. And I recommend doing it that way. Save it out as a small, the same size as the what you're going to be working with. And this is why pixel art is important, because when you have something this small, if you try to use the dithering, it just doesn't look right, because you're very limited on the pixels you can use in it. Like that's all I can use for the pixels of the breast. And if you look at her dithering, this doll that's dithered, see the dithered edges here? When you zoom out, it doesn't look crisp. It actually looks kind of blurry and just doesn't look very good. So, if your art is larger, if your sprites are, I don't know, let's say this one is under 64 pixels tall, so it's really small. But if it's like 128 pixels tall, something around that, you can add more detail to it. But even then, I recommend doing pixel art. Pixel art means no dithering. If you do any dithering, do it by hand. But in other words, you're using a pencil tool. You're not using the pen tool. The pen tool, when it makes a line like this, automatically dithers and looks more smooth. But unless your art is quite large, unless you're doing like HD art, then the end result doesn't look nearly as good as when you do the pencil lines. And also, we're going to be using some dithering, some really cool techniques to get really fast dithering on the inside of the lines. And that actually makes the lines look a lot smoother. Also, when the game is actually ran, these lines look a lot smoother anyway. So I recommend it. It looks a lot more crisp. I actually tried doing one. The dragon guys are not pixelized yet like this, and the dragons in the game just don't. The dragon frogs, the red guys, they just don't look as good as everything else. So yeah, and you gotta consider details like with something this small, you're not gonna be able to see the face. You're not gonna be able to see the arm. Now remember, I'm drawing her bigger. So she's actually bigger than my main character. My main character is only, what is she again? She is 54 pixels tall, and this character is taller than that. So you can see each one of these squares is 32. So she's a little bit bigger than 64. So she's like 74 or something like that pixels tall. So she has a little more detail I can put into her that I couldn't put into my main character. That's why I wanted to draw her a little bit bigger, because I did want to capture more detail. So at first, I don't worry about the fact, see how there's a pixel here and a pixel here? I don't worry about this at first. You come back in and clean this up. We're gonna take off that pixel, that pixel, that pixel, remove that pixel and that pixel. So you just have, you don't want a straight line like that. You want this, when you have steps like that, you want it to step down 1 pixel at a time. Hopefully, see right here, there's like 1, 2 pixels, and there's that pixel. You don't put a pixel here, and you don't put a pixel here. Like, see right here, there's this L shape. You don't want L shapes, so I would remove that pixel right there. And I'll do that when I come back in and fix it up. So I actually managed to get something that looks like a hand here. And this comes down to just practice and figuring out different ways you can make things look like something. I think I might do a pixel art course where I'll go through the main shapes that you use to combine together, kind of like you know how we use main shapes in drawing. We use like the you'll rough out your sketch with like using spheres and cones and triangles and squares and stuff, and you'll kind of like just get a loose sketch going for what you want the drawing to look like, and then you'll refine that. When pixel art, there are certain shapes that are reusable again and again and again, like the star, and then the little which is basically, it's hard to explain. I'll have to show you guys sometime. But yeah, if anyone's interested in that, let me know. I might make a free lesson just to give the basics of pixel art, and then to prepare for the full course, which will go into all the tricks and stuff that I use to make pixel art for video games. And so this is the base right here. And sometimes what I like to do is I like to actually lay out where my shadows are kind of going to be. And I recommend for video games, you want the shadows to come from the top. And what's cool about these models in Clip Studio Paint is they allow you to change the lighting too. So that same button I click to change her body style. You can also change the lighting. So turn off the cast shadow because you don't need that, the drop shadow, whatever. And then go into the little ball and you can actually change the direction of the light. So make the direction of the light coming from above, maybe a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, but make sure your whole game is that way. So everything in your backgrounds, that same lighting should apply. The reason why you don't want to go too much to the right or too much to the left is because your character needs to be able to turn left or right, and that should fit either side. So you really want to try to have the lighting coming from straight above as much as possible. That is above the character and a little bit toward us, the camera. Because like right now I'm making the light come in a little bit from the right. The problem is when this is swapped, this drawing is swapped to be on this side facing the other way. So when it's flipped around and she's on this side over here facing the opposite direction, all the shadows are going to be the wrong way now. Now she's going to be lit from the left hand side. So it's something you have to consider. But that's why I have it mostly coming from the top. And so when she does flip, it still looks good. It doesn't look too jarring or weird. A workaround for that, like this would be a very tedious workaround, but if you really wanted the lighting to look super dynamic and lit up from like one direction, let's say from the right and up above and from the right and toward the camera a little bit, but really more like dramatic type of lighting like you'd get in a movie or something like that, and you want it to work from all the ways, what you'd have to do is you'd have to draw each character. If they're able to face left and right, you'd have to draw each character facing left and right and shade it different. Like you would, the initial drawing would be the same, just a flat drawing, no shading yet, and then you would copy that over to the other direction so that she's facing right. Right now she's facing left. You'd have another one where she's facing right, and this is a trick right now I'm using where I'm doing dithering with the actual paint tool. So now I'm just using the actual paintbrush and I'm sampling different colors. I'm just doing regular paintbrush blending. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you set this layer to once you have all the solids blocked in, you want to set it to transparency lock. That way you can't draw outside of where you actually have pixels. And that's over on the right by layers. I'm using Photoshop to do this, just in case I didn't make that clear. And so I like to zoom in and out to make sure it's looking right from a distance, because that's how she's going to be viewed. And so you can see we can get actually a lot of interesting detail on the inside here, and it makes it read better from a distance when you do this. So when you use like some regular blending on the inside of your drawing with the paintbrush tool, it really just makes that whole thing kind of pop and read better. Now once you have all that done, then it's time to go back through. And also I still have to fix these edges here and the edge here and here. Now I'm trying to figure out what, I want to use a darker color now because I really want that detail to pop. And so in this case I'm using like a darker reddish brown. You got to decide on the colors you want to use. I like using the same kind of colors I would use when I'm painting. I find it adds a very interesting and artistic look to my pixel art, where it doesn't look so much like cartoonish, or it still kind of looks, it's like a mixture between cartoonish / painterly look, and I like that look. So I just basically use the exact same colors I use when I'm painting. And if you're wondering what colors those are and how to do that, I would recommend getting one of my courses on digital painting. Or I have some free lessons here on my YouTube channel about painting, and also about traditional painting, like painting with oils and painting with acrylics. And I think I have a video on here where I go through how to mix colors and blend them and stuff to get different colors. And anyway, but I have a whole digital painting course that goes all about color theory. It goes into color theory and how to do it and all that kind of stuff. I think I have a free lesson on here somewhere. Just type in color theory. Something should come up. Now I'm messing with the idea. I'm using the paintbrush tool, and I'm actually on size 1 brush. And I'm just kind of trying to dither out some of the edges just to see if it'll work or not. and then I'm going to go back in. I'm going to erase the stuff that I don't want. And sometimes this will give me a couple transparent pixels. Instead of trying to manual dither it, this kind of gives me I can kind of see it in real time whether I like it or not, and I can see which of those see that. By dithering, it just means like a pixel that's either transparent or a pixel that's lighter next to that pixel to kind of add the shape more that you want. It kind of like it's dithering is supposed to basically, it's like anti-aliasing, right? Same idea. It's supposed to smooth out those hard pixel lines. So now I'm going in, I'm erasing stuff I don't like that doesn't need to be there. And I'm just trying to see if the stepping will work better if I have a couple of dithered pixels there that are transparent. Right, so to save some time, let's go ahead and move through this. And so as you can see, I cleaned up most of it. So I got rid of most of it. I kept a few transparent pixels here and there because I figured, yeah, those kind of work. I thought I went back in and fixed this right here. See how you have this full L step right here? But maybe I figured it's a dark color and it reads fine from a distance. And I was going to blend it out. Maybe I blended out more on the inside here to get rid of those 2 pixels. But if I don't, that's something you should do. I can't remember if I do it or not. This took a while to figure out. It was kind of trial and error. Now there are certain shapes that I already know work because you can study a lot of pixel art. If you can find the actual pixel art you can open in Photoshop, you basically want to try to find like a PNG file or something when you look for sprite sheets. And you don't want to open the sprite sheet in a regular view. You want to open it in Photoshop. So you need to find a PDF file or something like that, because otherwise you're not seeing the actual pixel art. And so as long as as long as the pixel art looks like this in Photoshop, then it's the correct kind of file. And you can look at how they did faces, like zoom in and look at how they pixel the faces. Like it's really interesting to see like how, for example, how Street Fighter pixel the faces. And Street Fighter, you know, like let's say Street Fighter 2, those sprites are actually pretty large. I think they're like 128 maybe a little bit smaller than that. But they're definitely bigger than my main character. And I'm pretty sure they're bigger than her too, so they give you a little bit more pixels to work with on the face. But it's kind of amazing like what they were able to do with just a few pixels on a face. And I should also get rid of that hard one right there. There you go. See, I just got rid of it. But yeah, but I couldn't, like, I didn't have as many pixels to work with as something like a Street Fighter or other games I was looking at there where they had a face to it. Another good one to look at would be like Streets of Rage, and look at how they did. Like it's crazy how much they can do. Oftentimes the eyes are 3 pixels, and that's kind of cool. It's just how you place them and where you put the colors that makes the difference. And so with her face, you know, I messed around with it for a little bit until I can, you know, get something that looked like a face from a distance. I think I might even tweak this more. I can't remember if I leave it like that or not. But it's literally just a few pixels there. Now here, what you can see, so first I start with the, you know, with the outline of the pixels. I just kind of just sketch it in quickly. Then you can come back and fix up the edges, like, you know, delete certain pixels you don't want and stuff. And then go inside and fill in the solid color, and then use your paintbrush on a size 1 and do some, you know, blending on the inside of it to add a little bit of shadow and stuff. In this case, there's not a whole lot of shadow. It's mostly, you know, just dark color, but I added a little bit of highlight right here. That's a little bit of a lighter color. And you want to, you know, like, again, I go through all this in my course on digital painting. So if you go to my website, masterpaintingnow.com, or just click on the link in the description of this video, and that will take you to my website, masterpaintingnow.com. And I have a course there. I'm gonna go let this play while I'm talking. I have a course there that is about digital painting, and I go through these kinds of things like, you know, should your shadows be more saturated or desaturated, and when to take advantage of either making your shadows desaturated or making your shadows saturated, and when to, you know, how to do the highlights and what color to do the highlights, stuff like that. Just for example, I went with an all warm skin tone here. I didn't use any cool tones. I could have, but my game is, you know, I want the characters to kind of stick out from the background. The backgrounds are kind of more coolish for the most part, and so I wanted her to be more warm in color anyway. And you'll get that oftentimes, like if you take a photo of someone like out in the sun or something. So in this case, my shadows are a more saturated red, but then some places like in here I use a little bit more desaturated color for the skin. And then I have the skin tone just being a normal skin tone, which is basically somewhere between red and yellow, and then just turn down the desaturation to about the middle. So if you're looking at the actual, this isn't showing you the square, but if you're looking at, when it shows you the square, in the top right is the saturated color, the bottom left is pure black, top left is all white. Just put that right into the middle. So in Photoshop, just boom, put it right in the middle, and that's where you want to be for your skin tone, pretty much. Anyway, I go through all that. I go through all the different kind of skin tones you can use and stuff like that. I do plan on making another course on just color theory alone, and really spend a lot more time going into skin tones for different types of people. For darker people, lighter people, Asians, and all that kind of stuff. Maybe someone from Ethiopia. You have all these different skin tones and how to achieve that. Also, another thing in animation for video games often is you want the back, whatever's in your animation for your sprite, whatever limbs are in the back, so this leg is behind the other leg, you want that whole thing to be darker. So make all the colors darker. One way to do that is just make everything the same color, and then you can make another layer, put it over that layer, filled in with red or something, and then turn it to multiply, turn the opacity down, and then make sure it's only affecting that. So you want to put it to basically want to select these pixels only. So anyway, I'm not going to teach you how to do the Photoshop right now. I have a course that teaches how to use Manga Studio as well, and I have one that does teach like older Photoshop. I really need to make a newer one for how to paint with Photoshop, but specifically for painting with Photoshop. But anyway, so yeah, notice that all the skin tones are darker in that back leg, and so you want to do that way. It just reads as more in the background. And so for this arm back here, notice it's a slightly darker color than this arm up here. And it's typically a good practice to do for your video game art. And notice that even the gray here and the gray here, this is brighter than this, because this leg's in the background, so the whole leg is darker. Alright, so we're getting closer to being done here. And notice I add a little bit of really dark areas, like again where I want the details to read. So I wanted her breast to read, face. I wanted this armpit right here to read where it's where the arm's coming over. I wanted this part right here to read, and I wanted this edge that separates her buttocks from the leg to read. I'm actually quite amazed at how much detail I was able to put. Like once this is done, I was really amazed at how much detail I was able to get into this figure because she's so small that you only look at her breasts are literally just pixels, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pixels. I should remove that one right there and make a different color, more closer to this color. I think I do that later. And so now I decide I'm deciding on the colors, because my levels, and particularly the level she belongs to, has a lot of this like green acid, waterfalls and things like this. Imagine a lava level for a video game, but instead of lava, it's this green acid stuff. So I want she's the boss of that level, so I wanted to add that color into her design and make her stick out. So I'm only using 2 colors for her hair, or actually 3. One really dark version of the color, more desaturated version and a little bit lighter, and then a really light version of that color that really pops out. And I thought this looked good with the kind of purplish desaturated gray purple for the wings. And notice I'm using different colors here. So to make it read, I'm using a lighter color for the inside of the wings and a darker color for the outside of the wings, which is typically how like a bat wings would be. So as you can see, as I'm zooming in and out, everything's starting. And now you can see the face. I did change the face. I don't know if you can see that, but I can't remember at what point in the video I changed the face. So what I did is it says two dark dots here, 1 dark dot there with a slightly less dark dot next to it, and that goes into the shadow of the face. And then 2 dark dots down here, and then a mid-tone throughout here. And that, from a distance, that reads as a face. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'm happy with that. And then you want to bring in, and I wanted to test the animation. Also, sometimes like when I work on the next thing, instead of keeping a copy of the somewhere where I can sample the colors, I'll just create bigger squares here that I can easily sample the colors from. So these are all the colors that I end up using for that character. And so now I can easily sample these colors. So I just create these on another layer so I can turn it off and on. And then I can just sample them while I'm painting. It's faster than having to try to get the colors that I just painted on her. This way they're nice big squares I can grab from very easily. And so first I'll come in and kind of sketch. And I recommend to draw each layer, because if each layer is a little bit different, and in an animation each by layer I mean each frame should be a little different. So I'm starting in with the lightest color or the mid-tone color of the skin, and I'm just kind of going through it. And if you redraw each layer, so what I mean is don't try to not copy and paste another part of a animation unless it's going to be the same anyway, and that's fine. But you want to try to have as much change from frame to frame as you can, and that little bit of change in how you draw it from frame to frame will actually add more believability and less stiffness to your animation. And so that's why I'm spinning it, because notice that her body is almost exactly the same as it was a second ago. Like, see there, to save time, I could have just copied that body. The torso was pretty much the same, so I could have just copied and pasted that, and then just drew the arms and legs differently or something. But I wanted to redraw the torso completely because it does change a little bit from drawing to drawing. So I had purposely tweaked the 3D model to be a little different in each frame. That way, when I draw over it, it is going to add that difference to my finished piece. So there's going to be a little bit of change. See, now her breasts are a little bit higher. The shape of the torso changed a little bit because she turned and twisted a little bit. So then I just come in and I do something similar. Now once I have the hard lines like this is another technique you can use. You can go in and get all the shading done right now. And you can just leave it like this. If you kind of like this kind of cell shaded look, you can leave it like that. But I like it to look a little more realistic and a little more painted. So now after I get that done, I'm going to take my paintbrush tool, take this darker color, and size 1 paintbrush tool, and I'm just going to come in and dither this out, which basically just means light pressure and just kind of doing basic blending, like as if I'm painting. And that adds like that, see? And then I add that lighter color. Notice that my lighter color is more yellow. So my shadows are more red. These are more like desaturated brown, so in between, like a regular flesh tone peach. So in between the yellow and the red, but leaning a little bit more toward the red, and then desaturate, so come down or up depending on, add more gray into it basically. And in this slider you just move it down here like that. So I'd move this a little bit to the right to make it a little bit more yellow, move this here to the left, and that would give me a nice these nice tones right here. And then finally for my highlight, I put this almost all the way toward yellow, and I make this really bright. So now I have a bright kind of, it's not white though, it's like somewhere around here, right? And that's what I use for my highlight. And just notice, just adding that little bit, it really pops the whole entire skin tone. Let's go ahead and go back for a second, just so we can kind of see in real time what I'm talking about here when I add that color. So first I'm blending these two colors together, just kind of get rid of some hard lines on the inside and some hard pixels on the inside. Now I'm taking that yellowish color and that highlight, and watch how much it changes it. Like right now it looks kind of like clay almost. It doesn't quite look right, but when I add that highlight color, now I'm creating that square for it. When I add that highlight color, it really does change how the flesh tone looks. And if you want to even add more, you can't do too much of a painterly look with pixels because you have very little room to work with. So it's like it's really hard to do a gradation from like adding some green tones and some blue tones into the flesh tones like you would with a painting. So it's kind of harder to add those colors in there when you have very little to work with. But you could like maybe add some kind of like purplish, shadows to, some purplish color, desaturated kind of purplish color into the shadows, and that's kind of a cool look. But again, I wanted the whole flesh tone to be like nice and warm. And there you go. See, just that little bit of pixel right there, it really bent this shape right here. It really showed that indents more and then comes back out again. Like it's indenting away from us a little bit, so it really adds. And let's go ahead and fast forward here a little bit. So you can see, so now I have two different torsos. It took a little extra time because I had to redraw this torso completely from the other one, but that little bit of change from frame to frame is going to add to the animation. It's going to add to the appeal of the animation. So with the wings, I just used the pencil tool and I just drew it right out. And then you can come in and refine and fix the pixels more pixel by pixel and delete some pixels that don't need to be there. And then you can do some dithering if you feel it's necessary to make it look like there's a nice line like that now. Has a nice steps to it. And then if you still need more, like in here, you can add some dithering pixels in here, so pixels that are a little bit lighter than this color next to it, or even some transparent pixels. Then I add the light color on the inside of the wings, dark on the outside. And at this stage, it's like, okay, cool, the wings are looking good, I like them, but I still want, and now I'm going to do some actual blending with the paintbrush tools. Now I'm using the paintbrush tool, and I'm using it on, I'm just using a regular pen tool. So the settings are a hard pen tool, size 1. Because it's only 1 pixel, it really allows you to blend even though it's a pen tool. So I'm not using, there's no pressure sensitivity on it, but it just naturally has it because it's such a small, I've just noticed in Photoshop when you use a 1 pixel pen, it just does that. And so it kind of works like a pencil almost. So I'm adding lines here. I'm actually just lightly sketching lines up and down to make it look like the texture for the outside of the wings. And see how I can get lighter lines or darker lines? So what I found is with the size 1 pen, even if you press really hard, you can't get the darkest line. It's like just not possible, even though the opacity is all the way up and there's no pressure sensitivity. Because it's a pen, you know, it's set to the pen settings. Because it's a size 1 pixel brush, it just doesn't allow you to do that anyway. And I do some of the same kind of shading on the inside. I'm using lighter colors though. And then finally, I want to add some light to the inside of the wings. And so here's where I use some, cool digital painting techniques. So now I'm just, what I did is I set this layer to transparency lock, so that way I can't draw, as long as there's, wherever there's not a pixel, then it won't let me paint. So even though my paintbrush is painting outside here, it will only paint where there's actual pixels already. And so I'm just using a big soft airbrush, and I'm using a mixture of soft light. So I'm using setting my brush to soft light, and then also setting my brush to color dodge, and just very, very lightly getting this kind of look to it. And after I have those colors, then I'm going to go back in with my pen tool, or my paintbrush, which is set to pen settings at size 1. And I'm going to take some of this dark color and go back over this so it doesn't look, see how it looks a little bit blurry now? And I'll go back over that to bring some of those crisp, like that. See, now I brought some of those crisper details back. I add a little bit of pixels here and there for some veins. And then doing the same thing there. And we're just about done. Just adding a little bit of light to this frame here. Adding a little bit of red in there. You're not going to be able to see too much light from that frame. And this is like, the final stages. You want to really watch the animation several times and just see if you can catch anything you don't like. But see how I have that nice breast bounce, and that's just from 1 frame of anime, or 1 pixel change of drawing. Like to make them drop, you only had 1 pixel to work with. And oftentimes when you see like these idle animations where in Street Fighter where they're kind of like breathing and as they're standing still, that's literally just 1 pixel movement. It's kind of crazy what 1 pixel of movement can do for animation. And you can see it really makes her breasts look like they're really bouncing. I wanted to desaturate the wings. I felt like I went a little too overboard, so I desaturate the wings. You can just set your brush to desaturation mode and paint right over it. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. And I think I was happy with that. I think I might have toned down a little bit more of the colors. I think I might have in the wings and inside the wings. I think I desaturated them a little bit more so that the 2 frames matched more too. And then I'm just going in just doing some final cleanup, with the pixels. But for the most part, everything looks good. I mean, I like her face. Her face reads pretty well. Like from a distance, it reads like a face. and the boob bounce works, and she looks pretty sexy for, you know, such a tiny drawing. Keep in mind how small this is. You know, this is like 74 pixels tall from her head to her foot. The wings obviously make her a little bit taller than that, but her actual body is only 74 pixels tall. Open up Photoshop, open up a 74 pixel tall, tall file, and then put it to 100%, and look how small it is. You know, like it's super tiny. But in the video game, I kind of use my camera trick to kind of, you know, zoom in a little bit bigger, so she looks a little bit bigger on the screen. Everything looks a little bit bigger on the screen, and that's how you get away with doing. That's how all old school video games were done. Okay, cool. Hope you guys enjoyed this and learned something from it. If you guys have, please do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button, and then hit the bell notification to see my videos in the future. I do videos all about, you know, drawing different kinds of stuff and painting, and yeah, so if you guys are interested in that, then like I said, do that, and maybe share the video, maybe leave a comment. I'd appreciate it. Until next time, I'll see ya. Keep on drawing.